Hi everyone, happy Friday or Ureishi Kinyobi for those of you in Japan, and thank you so much for watching. As I film this video, it is my final weekend in Japan after almost 6 years, and it is certainly a bittersweet moment. So I thought my final filming in Japan should be a love letter of sorts to this magnificent country that has given me more than I could ever repay. Most of this video will be about that, but I will also outline the things about Japan that absolutely drive me crazy, which are essentially the reasons that I can't wait to leave, and why I'm genuinely concerned about the future of Japan as our world continues to globalize. So essentially this video is going to be an honest assessment of living in Japan, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as well as what I think the future looks like, especially given my experience starting and running a company here. So if you're interested in visiting Japan, moving to Japan, or are fascinated by Japanese culture and history and want to learn more, much like I was before I moved here, I hope you find these insights helpful. Great, now before we jump into it, please don't forget to subscribe or smash that like button or bell to get notifications about my newest videos if you like the content. So I'd like to start with the positives about Japan first, and just a small note here that I've been fortunate enough to have lived all over the world in America, Europe, Africa, and other parts of Asia, so I think I have a decent perspective of why I think Japan has the highest quality of life in the world. But this, of course, is dependent on what you value or what variables you believe are important to include when deciding how to measure the quality of life in a certain city or country. But please let me build my case. In one sentence, I would describe life in Japan as extremely comfortable in almost all dimensions of life. Life in Japan is idyllic, and the Japanese really do live in a bubble compared to the rest of the world. This is due to many of the reasons I covered in one of my previous videos about life lessons I've learned in Japan, but I'll build on some of those points as well as offer some other insights related to everyday life here. First of all the stereotypes are true. Japan is extremely safe, clean, polite, and has highly efficient trains and transportation, fantastic food, and beautiful culture. I've never once felt in danger or threatened in Japan unless it was from a drunk tourist. As well, contrary to popular belief, Tokyo is extremely affordable. It is easily not even half, but 1/3 the cost of other major global cities like New York, London, or Paris. Restaurants are quite delicious and affordably priced. Beers and drinks are often between 300 to 600 yen, which is about $3 to $5, and they have a variety of food for about 1,000 yen or about $10. This means that you can have a more social life, frequently meeting up with your friends after work or on the weekends instead of cooking at home. While summer is hot, Tokyo has extremely pleasant weather with a shorter winter of maybe 2 months that is mostly sunny and rarely snows. Also within reach of Tokyo are nice beaches. Although they are not as pristine as Bali or Thailand, they are certainly worth a visit to cool off in the summer, where you can see Mount Fuji at sunset, and also often they have quite good parties. In the winter, you can also take a Shinkansen to Nagano or Gunma in the Japanese Alps for some of the best skiing in the world. It's possible to get on a bullet train at 6:30 in the morning from Tokyo Station on Saturday and be on the slopes waist deep in powder by 9 a.m. Healthcare here is also world-class and affordable, which I've found out firsthand with a few accidents. Also compared to the West, the Japanese are extremely civil to each other and especially strangers. While it seems Western societies are becoming more polarized by the day, with an us versus them mentality,
health authorities have activated their most serious response level
after an outbreak of a new type of viral pneumonia
in central China,
which leaves little room for having a difference of opinion that would result in some sort of rational, fact-based conversation. Japan is at the opposite end of this spectrum. It's hard to definitively pin down the exact reason for this, but I'd say it has a lot to do with how homogeneous Japan is. And while Japan is becoming more and more international every year, compared to the rest of the world or other major cities in Asia like Shanghai, Hong Kong, or Singapore, Japan is still extremely Japanese. I'm continually impressed by the clock-like workings of the Japanese society, how beautiful the nature is, how rich and deep their culture and history is. And of all the countries that I've been to in the world, I'd say Japan is my #1 recommendation for somewhere to visit if you've never been, because basically it's impossible for you not to be changed by this country. So why the hell do I want to leave this country if it's so magnificent? Well, to understand why I can't wait to leave Japan, you first have to understand what Mark Manson would call my God value, which I think he can explain better than me.
We all have this kind of hierarchy of values that determines our prioritization. It helps us make decisions on like where our time is best spent. In our value hierarchy, something is at the top. And I use the name God value, but it's not necessarily a religious. For a lot of people, it's a religious value. But it's whatever our top value in our life is, it basically dictates the decision making of everything underneath it. Like I say in the book, like it becomes a lens by which everything else is perceived.
So for me, my God value is life experiences, or living life to the fullest. I think we only got one shot at this thing, so we better make the best of it. So being spontaneous and seizing the opportunities that life throws at you is how I want to live my life. But I would argue that Japanese culture and society would disagree with this. In fact, I'd say they are literally at the opposite end of the equation. The Japanese base their entire society on two main principles: risk aversion and not upsetting someone. These principles permeate every part of Japanese society, which results in dizzying levels of inefficiency and bureaucracy to get almost anything done, from signing up for a gym to throwing away garbage properly. To give you a few examples of this, I was shocked to find out that two people in their 20s, for example 24 and 28, will need to use different levels of politeness of Japanese in order to not offend each other due to their age difference. For another example, consider Japanese style content and international style content, which is what my company specializes in helping Japanese companies with. If you've ever been to Japan or seen any manga or other Japanese movies or content, you will know that they have a completely different style compared to Western style. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I love Japanese content and I think it can be extremely original. But normally it won't work for corporate branding or advertising purposes unless the purpose is to shock the audience.
コンソメパンチニューポンチじゃないよコンソメパンチうまさが効いてるコンソメパンチコンソメコンソメコンソメパンチニューコンソメコンソメコンソメパンチパンチで元気コンソメパンチ
Of course, there's always been Nintendos, Sonys, and Panasonics.
Bring Hollywood to your home. OLED televisions from Panasonic.
But a vast majority of Japan Inc. has survived and indeed thrived on domestic demand. So they don't understand how to make international style content. But due to Japan's hyper-aging society, this domestic demand, which traditionally makes up over 50% of their GDP, is plummeting. Japanese companies know that to continue to grow, or at least stay the same size, they need to look outside Japan for sales. They know that China is growing every year, improving their manufacturing and global prowess, but still Japan Inc. is extremely slow to change how they communicate or do business in general. I cannot tell you how many meetings I've been in where I can see they clearly agree with our proposal to help them communicate with international style, but they don't want to be the ones to decide a new style of communication or even to work with a new company instead of the same Japanese advertising agency that they've worked with for the last 50 years, even though they know that the results they're getting are terrible. This means often business decisions are being made not based on merit, but on existing relationships. This is one of the main reasons I'm concerned for Japan as the world continues to globalize and be more competitive. Those countries or companies who can be flexible and can do business anywhere will strive. The fact that startups in Japan are essentially non-existent is another example of this, because it is still preferred to become a corporate soldier, called a salaryman, at a massive Japanese company like Honda, Mitsubishi, or Panasonic, instead of taking the risk of starting your own business or working at a startup. Indeed, HR is probably one of the hardest things of starting a business in Japan, because everyone views startups negatively or as too risky. Instead of in the West, where startups are usually attractive to people who believe in the business model or mission of the company. This desire not to upset anyone can also be one of the main reasons that there isn't a lot of sociability in Japan. I miss so much living in New York or Istanbul, where people are very sociable and talking to the deli worker, baker, or taxi driver is normal. Where any night you can go out and you can expect to make new friends, talk to new people, and have great conversations about interesting topics. It is quite sad to say, but in 6 years, I only have a few close Japanese friends that I see regularly or talk on the phone often with. Now, of course, my Japanese is horrible, which cuts out a lot of the population, but even of my friends who have been here 15 plus years, went to university here, speak native business level Japanese, they as well only have a few Japanese friends. The Japanese simply are not an outgoing people. So because I value life experiences, meeting fascinating people, taking risks, essentially living my life to the principles of Carpe Diem, I am excited to leave Japan. Now later in life, when I maybe have started a family, well then my quality of life equation will change and all the things that make Japan have the highest quality of life in the world will become more important. things like safety, politeness, cleanliness, affordability, and education and healthcare, so I'm absolutely not ruling out living in Japan again in the future. I know the moment that I step on the plane, I will miss Japan, because I know how extremely fortunate I've been to have been able to live 6 years of my life in this magnificent country. Well, that's it for now. Thank you again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and ask any questions you may have in the comment section below. Also, if you like this video, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up to keep the YouTube guys happy. See you next week.